Hello and welcome to FG Mania. In this video, we will analyze a very violent, gore game and most importantly, extremely blasphemous. Developed by the Game Kitchen and released by Team 17, take the theme of apocalypse in religion, and if you've played Blasphemous Trials you will notice that the in-game images and gameplay are quite inspired in the series such as Castlevania, or Dark Souls. The world in Blasphemous is encapsulated in two words: suffering. Every second in the world of Blasphemous, which is specifically the continent of Custodia, to be described through blood and corpses. The pain of each individual lives, and it seems that it is something that never stops and all makes Custodia become a dark place and full of interesting mysteries. Before summarizing the plot, I will remind you that Blasphemous is a game with a religious element. And in this video, I will use a lot of sensitive words. But remember that the whole story is just the fantasy content of the gamer. So hopefully you won't think too deeply into this factor. In Blasphemous, you play an unknown warrior, wearing a quirky hat and known as the Atonement. In this video, I'm going to call his name Penitent. Penitent wakes up in the middle of a forest of corpses in a ruins called Brother of Silent Sorrow. There's no reason why you're here, but with Penitent's expression, you probably know what to do. Trying to leave the ruins, a great warden appears. Penitent takes him down. At the same time, with the hat in his hand, he filled the warden's fresh blood and put them on his head. Stepping out of the ruins, Penitent saw someone waiting. And that's the first time I've met Deogracias, who introduces himself as a witness and a person who conveys the will of miracles. Deogracias says what Penitent is looking for is the source of the miserable miracle. You'll find it at the highest level of the Mother of Mothers Church. An ancient church located in the most remote and desolate region that even Deogracias had no idea of the curse that had been guarded inside. All he knew was that to enter the church, Penitent had to own 3 humiliation signs scattered throughout Custodia. The journey takes Penitent through the lands, from the village of Albero to the ruins of Mercy Dream Church. At the same time as the reign of Ten Piedad, the giant demon with the head of the goat, Penitent awakens the demon and fights it. After defeating Ten Piedad, Penitent enters a corridor where he has seen a statue of the sleeping man. He knelt to pray, and when he opened his eyes, he found himself standing in a wilderness. At this point, he is met with a golden face of a man. He said Penitent's act of kneeling before the comedies made it possible for Penitent to face and possess the acrimony sign. Waking up from his dreams, Penitent realized that his hand was the first humiliation sign. Stepping out of Mercy Dream, he meets Deogracias again, who tells Penitent that the face he met in his dream, it is the Holy Visages, one of the 3 saints holding the humiliation sign chosen by the miracle. And so, Penitent continues to collect the remaining signs. And the second sign sits on a snowy mountaintop, where he fights the guard Charred Visage. To get the right to see Holy Visages and own the second Akram penalty sign. Continue the mission of bringing Penitent to the Mountain of Ashes. Along the way, he was attacked by a female knight with red wings. After an encounter she disappeared. With no clue as to his identity, Penitent continued his journey deep into the Mountain of Ashes, leading him to the Jondo site. There he fought 3 female keepers, Penitent, who crossed the Forties to see Holy Visages. And at the same time receiving the last humiliation sign, identifying an individual who has possessed all 3 signs. The sealed door of the Mother of Mothers Church has now opened. Heading straight for the church, while crossing the 3 Knights Bridge, Penitent was suddenly attacked by a knight with a mace. While fighting for a while, the female knight with red wings appears, and at this point, Penitent falls into a situation of 1 or 2. A fatal blow was launched to take the life of the knight holding the mace, and at that moment the female knight also disappeared. Stepping inside the grounds of the Mother of Mothers Church, Penitent meets Deogracias. He told Penitent that the knights you encountered at the 3 Knights Bridge were named Perpetua and Esdras, guardian knights of King Escribar. At the church, Penitent saw a large stump, Deogracias said, calling it the knot of the 3 words. Objects that prove the presence of the first miracle. This miracle comes from a fairy tale. It tells that a young man wants to repent of his terrible sins. Sat under a tree and asked the Supreme One to give him physical pain. So penitent can erase the torment in his soul, and so the miracle comes. The trunk clings to the young man's limbs and twists them tightly together. It made the young man painful, but until he died he didn't say a word. After the young man dies, the roots grow. And every year from the trunk, the gold melts out. The people of Custodia all know this story and thereby honor the young man as a symbol of faith. And they also believed that physical pain would erase the sins of the soul. Heading to the shrine at the highest point of the Mother of Mothers Church, penitent meets a golden armored female knight waiting. Her name is Chrysanta and her mission is to stop penitent's journey. After defeating Chrysanta, penitent strikes the finish but she escapes. Entering the king's shrine, the white ground cleared by ash, penitent heard a voice ringing. Saying that in his dreams, the king heard penitent's footsteps getting closer and closer. The king introduces himself as Escribar, the guardian of the miracle and the incarnate of miracles. With the golden sword in his hand, he fought penitent, and the war happened pretty quickly. But as soon as he defeats Escribar's human being, he returns to his divine nature with his new name. The last child of miracles, this war took longer but it finally ended. And so Pope Escribar, the last son of the miracle, was destroyed. Heading inside the shrine, Deogracias was waiting, saying penitent still had one last task to do. Penitent looked to the top of the mountain of ash and he saw a throne reigning glittering and lonely. As he approached the throne, penitent pulled out his sword and stabbed himself, a source of strength in the sword that passed into his body. Making penitent's entire body a stump, sometime later peacefully returned to the whole world of Custodia. The people began to honor his body as a messed up, who was said to have voluntarily sacrificed himself. At the same time breaking the curse that the miracle of suffering has caused. The cutscene then shows the female knight Chrysanta appearing and pulling the sword out of the penitents. And that's the basic summary of what happened in Blasphemous. Now we will come together with the analysis of the information of the game. Based on the summary, we understand that Custodia is a complex land. And this complexity does not start from the moment of the events in Blasphemous. It's been formed a long time ago in Custodia's history, quite a lot of detail, but they're so disjointed that we come up with countless questions. About the origin of what's called the miracle. As far as we know at first, the miracle is a form of the divine will that is both holy and poisonous. Something we can't and will never be able to unravel. And inadvertently this information has given us a big clue about the definition of miracles. And if encapsulated, the miracle mentioned in Blasphemous is a general way of the divine will. And the will of the gods is two forms of blessing and punishment. So we understand the phrase the miracle, which will next come to the twisted one. Then the twisted one, which may sound a bit confusing but if associated with Deogracias' story, we'll immediately understand that the twisted one is the word used to call a young man turned into an old tree. And why the twisted one is so famous, right at the end of the story we know that the twisted one is a symbol of proof for faith in the existence of miracles, and perhaps because of that, physical torture is also a way of expressing repentance. I noticed in Blasphemous, each item comes with a short story and I found 4 special items. Tells the legend of a major event, it is related to Mount Jondo and the throne that we see in the shrine of Escribar. And this story concerns him, too, according to the connection of the story and the clues of the lines. It used to be at the Mother of Mothers Church. For some reason Escribar turned into a very big tree. It was so big that it punctured both the ceiling and the long branches that covered the church. But one day the priests under Escribar burned the tree and it burned for 90 days and nights. When the fire went out, the tree was now just a mountain of ash, but on top of it was still present on the throne. The lust for power left bishops and priests blurred, and they trampled on each other and attempted to climb to the top of the ash mountain to take the throne. But in the end, the ash mountain devoured them all. Then a horrifying event occurred. From the mountains of ashes the bishops and priests revived in the form of a swarm of demons. These demons are called armies of punishment and the incarnate of the miracle of suffering. One more detail is that the last revived of the demons was the king of Escribar, but in the form of the devil. That's why he calls himself the last son of the miracle. From there, we have further clues that Escribar is the source of the miracle of suffering. And this miracle is the beginning and the answer to why the whole world of Custodia is filled with demons. What we're wondering about in this story is why Escribar turned into a big tree. And why is that throne called the turned throne? First of all, the turned throne is a word that claims that this throne has been turned around. I mean, normally you watch movies, you'll see the throne turn toward the gods. But in the case of the turned throne, the throne turned its back, which alluded to Escribar turning his back on his parish people. I have a theory as to why Escribar turned his back on his parish people. Perhaps because the parish is worshipping the Twisted One, and Escribar worships the Supreme. It was the creator of the Twisted One, the conflict of faith between Escribar and the parish people that made him sad. And so he turned his back on his parishes, creating the turned throne, the sorrow that made Escribar increasingly wither. And so the Supreme One performed a miracle that made Escribar's body a great tree. It seems that the parish will worship the great tree, but from the moment Escribar turned his back on the parish people, they also turned their backs on him, and so the tree was burned, which in turn led to the miracle of suffering. It seems that it is the legend of Custodia. Now we will analyze the protagonist, Penitent One. We see Penitent as a mysterious character. Right at the beginning we see Penitent lying in the middle of a forest of corpses. These corpses all wear the same hat as Penitent, so perhaps these corpses are on a mission like him. The sword that Penitent uses is also unusual. This one is called mea culpa, trained from the sinful heart of a woman who later became the kneeling stone. Mea culpa's power is not simply to kill demons but to absorb the sins within them. In the first time Penitent upgrades the mea culpa bar, we'll see the blood flowing backward. Or rather, the blood was sucked inside the Twisted One statue step. Based on this clue, we learn that Penitent One's purpose is to purge the sins of the entire realm of Custodia. In the series, The Kneeling, we'll know what happened before Penitent was in the dead. I see that Penitent had a battle with Chrysanta before everything happened and she threw Penitent into the cliff. There's one more detail in the comics when Penitent first wields the mea culpa sword. The guide said a very strange sentence as the sword of the Father is born again. That is, the Father's sword was born again. And this word, again, affirms that the sword of mea culpa was born many times before. Before Penitent touched the sword, a lot of people used it. And this gives me the theory that immediately after the fact that the Supreme One performs the miracle of suffering, the liberation of sin from the mountains of ashes to punish the whole world of Custodia. Then at that moment, the Supreme One performed another miracle. The Supreme One silently created a weapon to absorb sin to one day. Someone will take the sword and end the miracle of suffering, and of course, it is easy to hold the sword, but killing the devil is the hard part. And the hardest part is confronting Chrysanta, King Escribar's general of the defense. And that led to the situation. Penitent was slashed to death by Chrysanta and thrown into the pit. And it seems to be the end of all the dead bodies in the pit. What's different in Penitent from other corpses is that he's reborn. And this rebirth occurs when Penitent is given the miracle of hope. In other words, the sword mea culpa found its true master. At first, I thought why Chrysanta didn't hide the mea culpa sword so no one could use it. The simple answer is because she can't do that, because the sword is a kind of miracle, but the miracle is the will of the Supreme. Mea culpa is not a sword in a material form, so anyone can hide it. I think if the owner of the sword is not chosen by the miracle, the sword will disappear on its own and be born somewhere else. In the comics, Chrysanta once told Penitent that their atonements are different but complementary to each other. Antagonistic but can't survive without each other. It is understood that Penitent and Chrysanta serve a common subject who is supreme. That Chrysanta is the guardian of the suffering miracle, while Penitent is the guardian of the miracle of hope. Chrysanta's move to pull the sword out of the trunk led many to think she had broken the seal. But I think this action may allude to Chrysanta's actions. We'll use the mea culpa sword to kill demons in the next part of the game. And that's the game analysis's theory for the plot legend of Blasphemous games. If something is unreasonable or wrong, please comment right below. And remember, what you said in the video is just a theory.